Hello, my name is Colin McPherson, and welcome to the Diamond Diaries Podcast. In this series, we will be going through a rotating cast of guests as we examine their journeys throughout their lives as a fan of the game of baseball. Let's get started. Hello and welcome. I'm here with my guest today, Futures League Commissioner Joseph Paolucci. Joe, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Colin. Thank you.
So kind of just get us started with what is the Futures League?
Yeah, sure. So the Futures League, the Futures Collegiate Baseball League is a summer collegiate baseball league. We have teams all over New England. At one point we had, I think there was 12 teams in the league. We are down to 6 teams, 7 if you include Pittsfield. Pittsfield's gone dormant for a couple of years while they're building a beautiful $20 million stadium there. But summer collegiate baseball is exactly what it sounds like. So it's college players that are getting the opportunity to play in front of large crowds throughout the summer. We have teams in Worcester, Nashua, New Hampshire, Burlington, Vermont, Norwich, Connecticut, New Britain, Connecticut, and Westfield, and then of course Pittsfield. All of our fields, with the exception of Westfield, are former professional stadiums. We have capacity of, I think Vermont has a capacity of 5,000. New Britain might be the most with 6,000. And on occasion we sell those stadiums out. On a typical Tuesday night you might only get 1,000 people, 1,500 people. But on Fridays and Saturdays, we get really good crowds. So it's a minor league business model, basically.
Yeah, and you do that with all sorts of promotional nights and things like that. You have a bunch of really cool stuff. I've been to a few games, just throughout my time, and it's always a fun time.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's family fun. We're trying to create an atmosphere where, parents want to take their kids and have an affordable, fun night at the ballpark. I mean, we have. Tickets are usually $8 to $10. The food is reasonably priced, so you can take a family of 4 to one of our games for less than $100.
Yeah.
Whereas that's $1,000 to go to a Red Sox game, or $300 to go to a Worcester Red Sox game. So it's really affordable, and as you mentioned, we do types of promotions that the kids really enjoy.
Yeah, and on top of that, you do have a real chance to see future big league talent. An example is someone like a Ben Rice, who is a all-star finalist for the DH position in the AL.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys identify that kind of talent?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So each team has a general manager or a field manager that is responsible for building the rosters, and they have to develop relationships with college coaches throughout the country. I went to Northeastern, so I'll use Northeastern as an example. We have a great relationship with their coaching staff. They love to send their players to us. So one of our GMs will call, the assistant coach for Northeastern and say, hey, who are you going to send us? Mm-hmm. And, it might be a pitcher or a catcher or an infielder or whatever. And so our rosters are built that way. And then so the really good players, really they thrive in our league and are able to move up to the next level, which is like the Cape Cod League or whatever. But you mentioned Ben, like he's obviously kind of our prized pupil over the last 5 years. But we also have Sal Frelick, who is a starting right fielder for the Brewers right now, and Matt Shaw, who's a starting third baseman for the Cubs.
Yep.
They were all stars in our league. Just a couple of years ago. Matt Shaw is an amazing story. He wasn't on the Worcester Bravehearts roster until there was 13 games left in the regular season, and he hit 9 home runs in 13 games, which is amazing. He was second in the league in homers, and he only played in 13 games. So we've had other. I think we're close to 20 players that have made their major league debut. We've had a couple of hundred kids that have been drafted.
Yeah.
By Major League Baseball, so it really is a great prospect league. Yeah,
and it's a great stepping stone and things like that, and people get a chance to go, and they get a chance to see maybe the next Ben Rice will play in, the next game they go to see.
Yeah, tonight, for example, we have three games tonight in the league, and I guarantee you that there's a kid that's playing in one of those 3 games that's going to be in the major league someday.
Yeah. You know, someone will come back and check that clip in 5 years and say, "Hey,
That's right.
it's him." But yeah, I mean, but your love for baseball, I assume it didn't start as an adult. I assume we're going back to when you were a kid for this, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You know, just like you, I grew up in Weymouth, Mass. And, you know, this was well before the internet.
Yeah.
So, like, we were kind of forced to go outside and play a little bit. That's all we did was really play baseball or some form of it, whether it was tennis ball, baseball, or wiffle ball or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, me and you know, one of my good friends in the neighborhood, I remember one particular summer, we picked like 3 or 4 teams each, and we would just basically play one-on-one wiffle ball. But we would, every time one of us would come up to bat, we would say who we were on one of those
Yeah.
teams, and then whatever the result was of our bat, we would literally walk over to our notebooks and write them down.
You'd score the game while you
We
went.
would score the game while we were playing it, and you know, and that started a love for collecting baseball cards, and yeah, so you know, had typical childhood, and but you know, certainly baseball was my number one sport growing up, and played Little League and Babe Ruth in high school and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, and you know, when you were growing up, you know, was there a go-to team when you were playing those games besides maybe the Red Sox?
Yeah, so obviously the Red Sox were my favorite team, but yeah, it would shift a lot because, you know, that, like Sports Center was like in its infinite stages,
Yeah.
and so you were able to kind of get a national look at everybody. Like I remember being a Brewers fan for a while because of Paul Molitor.
Yeah.
Had a really long hit streak.
Mhm.
I think it was in '87. I loved Pete Rose for a while when he got traded to the Expos.
Yeah.
So I remember being a big Expos fan because Pete
Mhm.
Rose was there. So yeah, it was basically based on who our favorite player was, kind of like
Yeah.
that week. But the Red Sox were always the go-to team.
Well, yeah, that's really cool, and you know, Red Sox, you know, that's something we have in common. We both grew up loving the Red Sox,
Mhm.
and you know, you grew up in a much different time. I grew up kind of spoiled. We got World Series quite often.
Right.
For you, you didn't see one until 2004. What was it like, kind of growing up during the curse of the Bambino?
Yeah, it was devastating. You know, 1986. I was 11 years old when the ball went through Buckner's legs.
Mhm.
I literally remember, you know, exactly where I was when that happened. I remember it was. I don't remember if it was Halloween night, but I remember my parents were at a Halloween party, and me and another friend were at my house watching the game, and just, you know, couldn't believe what had happened.
Yeah.
You know, because we were so close, and so that was pretty bad. And then in the '90s, they had some really good teams that got close, but you know, but the A's were always really good, and the National League always had really good teams, so we couldn't get past those teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough. It was tough being a Red Sox fan, and then, you know, I used to love Mo Vaughn, and they traded him after his MVP season, and Nomar, you know, Nomar kind of overstayed his welcome a little bit, but
Yeah.
but you know, he was incredible. He was Joe DiMaggio for 6 or 7 years really with the Red Sox. So yeah, it wasn't easy. I didn't have it as easy as you did, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I won one when I was 2, but I don't remember that. But I also won one at 8, and I won one at 13.
Yeah.
So I mean, I got 2 that I can remember. I got 3 that I was alive for, and I was, you know, about to be born.
Yep.
For that 2004 team. But that 2004 team, you know, how palpable was the energy around that team, especially the further and further along you got, and they're like, okay, this actually could be the year.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know if it's a 30 for 30 or just any other sports documentary, but the documentary on that '04 team is amazing. I could literally watch that every day.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things that people don't remember about that team is they weren't that good
Mhm.
throughout the regular season. I think they squeezed in with the wild card
Yeah.
maybe, and then, you know, they were having it basically handed to them by the Yankees in the ALCS, and they just won those 4 games, and you know, the rest was history. But it was just incredible, especially because '03 they
Yeah.
lost on the Aaron Boone walk-off. I thought that was going to be the year, and
Mhm.
you know, so for them to come back in '04 and win it was incredible. And now you look back on that team, and all the talent they had, it was like, well, why didn't they go undefeated that year?
Yeah.
They were so good, but in reality, it was they just got hot at the right time, which is literally what baseball is all about at every level.
Yeah.
I don't care how good or how bad a team is. If you peak at the right time, you can win a championship.
Yeah, and sort of jumping forward towards that, I mean, towards that 2021 roster, they had that magical run getting into the wild card somehow.
Yep.
And then, Kike Hernandez started hitting like prime Barry Bonds in
Yeah.
the playoffs, and I went to one of those games, and I think it was like, has the most extra base hits in like a 3-game span in Red Sox playoff history is like 7 or something, and
Yeah.
it's like, all right,
And he's not even he's not a Hall of Famer, right?
No.
Like
He's a pretty good player.
he was a pretty good player. It just goes to show you just got to get hot at the right time, and anybody can do it. Anybody can be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a great example of that.
Yeah, and that whole team was full of guys that just got like really hot, and some player on that team who I grew up, I had a personal soft spot for because every time I went, he homered. Was Bobby Dahlbeck,
Oh yeah.
who he did not much after that team,
Yep.
but just for that one run, he was serviceable.
Yeah.
And Kyle Schwarber was just on the Red Sox for that one run.
Yep.
And Bogarts, that was his kind of final hurrah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Evaldi, and that's when Nick Pivetta became a name that baseball fans actually knew.
Yep.
And it's just interesting. People didn't take off after that team
Yeah.
the same way that David Ortiz really took off after 04.
Yeah.
And I mean, Pedro, everyone already knew Pedro, but Manny, he kind of reached another level around that time. Maybe he never got quite as high again, but that picture with him of his hands up and the home run
Yeah. It was
it's an iconic photo, and that's his legacy. That 2021 team, that's nobody's legacy.
Yeah. Right.
But-
Yeah, it's a great point. I think they didn't have the personalities that the 04 team did.
No.
Probably, right? I mean, Millar, you forgot to mention Millar from
Yeah.
that 04 team. Like, Millar was a good player, fine player. I'm glad he was on our team, but like his main contribution was in the clubhouse,
Yeah.
really, and Manny being Manny and as crazy as he was, and
100%.
Ortiz was, he was just starting to become great,
Yeah.
around those 03, 04 years. And fun fact about that team, though, the 04 team is that pitching rotation didn't miss one start.
Really?
Yeah, so it was Pedro, Schilling, Wakefield was in there, right? Derek
Yep.
Lowe, and Bronson Arroyo.
Oh, yeah.
So from day one all the way through the playoffs, they didn't miss a start because of injury, which is really unheard of in Major League Baseball,
Yeah.
especially today.
Yeah, I mean, especially today. But, I mean, even if you went back and you told a pitching staff in 1977, hey, none of you guys are going to miss a start this year.
Yeah,
And people forget it's not just injuries that have to go right. Like, there's family stuff that goes into that. There's, sickness. There's, unfortunately, there's like really bad off the field issues with suspensions and things like that.
right.
And that's in the height of the steroid era. And
Yeah.
it was mainly hitters that were using it, but pitchers also use
for
steroids.
sure. Yeah,
So, I mean, so much had to go right for that team to not miss any starts. That's kind of
yeah, it really is amazing.
yeah. And there's some other great teams, the 2018 Red Sox team. For me, that's the Red Sox team that I'm going to be comparing every Red Sox team to for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And you mentioned dynamic personalities, and my mind immediately goes to that outfield with Benintendi,
Oh, right.
Bradley, and Betts, and after the game, they'd always do the dances
that
and
was
things
cool.
like that.
Yep.
And my dad and I often have this conversation of, the 1975 Red Sox outfield versus the 2018 Red Sox outfield. And if you look at it, like it's Lynn, Rice, Yaz, Fisk, like you got all these guys who are better players than I'd probably take Betts over any of them career-wise.
Yep.
But Bradley and Benintendi, not really close.
Right.
But for that one season,
They were great.
they were incredible. And
Yeah.
and you thought Benintendi was going to take
Sure.
off in the way Ortiz did. And you thought maybe Bradley was finally putting the bat together,
Yep.
but he just remained like the great defensive
Yes,
center
great
fielder
defender,
of a
yeah.
generation, which not a bad thing to be.
Yeah.
But you have all these, players that just for that one moment, for that 1 year,
Yep.
were just as good as your Carlton Fisks and your Collier Stremskys were that year.
Yeah, for sure. And, who was the guy that won the MVP of the World Series?
Steve Pierce.
Steve Pierce, right? Like, what a great trivia question that's going to be forever. And
Yeah.
nobody's ever going to get it, right? Because he's, no disrespect to him because he won the MVP of the World Series, but, like, he was a pretty forgettable player.
He wasn't even the best first baseman on that
It-
roster.
yeah.
They had Mitch Moreland that year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so-
And Mitch had a great year. He had a ton of doubles that year. Like, he was great.
Yeah, so again, it lends to what I said before about just getting hot at the right time. Like,
Yeah.
guy just picked the best, 10 days, of his life to get hot. And, I'd say he'll never be forgotten in Boston, but I already forgot his name.
Yeah.
So.
And, well, you mentioned it, and it goes back to anyone can get hot at any time.
Mhm.
It's just, he picked the perfect 10 days, like you said, and it's always the people that you don't expect.
Yep.
And he's another guy that kind of just didn't take off, and we expected more from him the next year. We didn't get it,
Yep.
and he's gone. And that's kind of that's been one of the defining characteristics of the Red Sox for me in my lifetime. And that kind of takes us to the Mookie Betts stuff, the Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts,
Yeah.
Benintendi, Bradley. 7 years later, 2018 is probably the greatest team in franchise history for the Boston Red Sox. There is not a player on the roster from that team 7 years later.
Yeah.
We had guys on the team 12, 13 years later from that 2004 team.
Yeah, good point.
It's like, so I guess my question to you would be, do you kind of feel like it's a smart move to kind of move off of these guys before it gets bad for the team? Or do you think you should be really trying to get every last ounce of it, especially in a town like Boston,
Yeah.
where we prioritize our guys so much? And once someone gives something to us, we really take that personally.
Yeah, I think I subscribe to the Bill Belichick theory. It's better to get rid of guys too early than too late.
Yeah.
The economics of baseball is really the culprit here. Like, it's just, for whatever reason, the Red Sox in particular have had a hard time paying their own guys.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to pay people because they've proven that they'll give out big contracts. But it's like, they always think the grass is greener someplace else. And, as fans, like, we would have loved to have seen, Betts and Bogarts and Devers together for 12 years, 15 years. Let's see how many championships can these guys win together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we want to see. But, I know the Red Sox fan base is huge and money's never an issue because it's a big market team. But
Third highest valued in the major leagues.
yeah, but at the same time too, like, there's only 35,000 seats, right? Like, so, compared to Yankee Stadium, where I think there's almost double that now.
Yeah.
Like, there are limitations as to where they can spend money. I'm probably one of the few fans that says that stuff, but it is real, and you have to be smart where you spend your money. And if it was me, I'd spend it all on pitching.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the name of the game. But they haven't done that. I think Breslow's done a decent job so far. I don't envy him in the whole Devers situation. But when you have a player, especially in a blue collar market like Boston, when you have a guy being paid $350 million and he's not willing to do whatever you ask him to do, that's a huge problem. He's got to go.
Yeah.
So I wish we got more back for him,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe those prospects will end up being studs for us. But Devers kind of had to go, I think, in that situation.
And I mean, even if Hicks, who pitched 2 nights ago now, as of the time we're recording this, he got up to 100 miles per hour a couple times, and I was like, oh, he could be a nice, 7th inning before we go Whitlock Chapman. You don't get a 7th inning guy for Rafael Devers.
Right.
That's not your return.
Right.
Like
100%. Yeah.
Rafael Devers is when he's good, and which is usually, he's one of the 10 best hitters in baseball.
Yep.
You don't get a 7th inning guy.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen us get a useful Major League Baseball position player, whether he was a third baseman or a first baseman, or that doesn't matter. but a useful big leaguer, and whoever their top prospect is, we should have gotten that.
Yeah.
I mean, Devers is an incredible player.
Yeah.
So I would have liked to have seen that, but again, like when teams know you're desperate to get rid of somebody, you're not going to give much up.
100%. And then I just want to pivot back to the Futures League now a little bit. Ben Rice, New York Yankee. You're obviously a Red Sox fan.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you want to see your guy do well. He was in your league. It's every time he does well, you can point to one more player and say, hey, look, he was here.
Yeah.
So obviously you kind of got to root for the Yankees a little bit now, especially like you want to see him do well in the playoffs. Red Sox are hoping to make the playoffs,
Yep.
Do you see a conflict of interest coming up on the horizon?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm old enough now where I can kind of back off my fandom a little bit for somebody that I have a personal relationship with. So, I definitely want to see Ben do well. I was psyched, last year when he hit the 3 homers against the Red Sox.
Yep.
To see a kid from up here, he's from Cohasset, to see a kid from the South Shore make it all the way to the New York Yankees and be the 3-hitter in their lineup is something special. So, I'm definitely rooting for him over the Red Sox for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned a personal relationship with him. What is that like?
Yeah, so outside of knowing him from his time in the Futures League, I have an indoor training facility, and he works out there in the winter. Him and his dad come every day, and it's amazing watching him work out because it's different from anything you would ever think that a major leaguer would do. So when he comes in, he sets up, he'll set up a tripod. As a lefty hitter, he'll have a tripod set up here with an iPad, and then he sets his phone up on another tripod behind him. We have the Hit Tracks machine there as well, and so his dad will throw him a pitch, and he hits it, and then he stops what he's doing and he watches the video from both sides, looks at the data from the Hit Tracks, and then he kind of takes his time a little bit, gathers himself, and then he does it again. So like in an hour and a half of hitting, he's probably only taking about 20 to 25 swings.
Yeah.
Whereas you and I as baseball guys, whenever we've gone to a batting cage, it's how many swings can we get in a short amount of time. So it's he clearly values quality over quantity, and it makes a ton of sense, right? Because when you start to swing, if you're in a batting cage and you take 20 swings in, 2 minutes. Swings 12 through 20 aren't going to be your best because your body's starting to get tired. Everything's a little slower, right? So it makes perfect sense of how he trains. So it's interesting. Other things I learned from him watching him work out was in the Yankee system, every single catcher all the way up from, rookie ball all the way up to the majors catches on one knee.
Yeah.
Which is the new style now. But, they could have the winning run at third base in Game 7 of the World Series, and the catcher's going to be down on one knee. And, again, you and I, coming from more of a high school background, that scares us a little bit, right? Because that ball gets in the dirt a lot more often than it does in the major leagues. But, again, that's in the Yankee system. He said that's what they value. It takes a lot of the pressure physically off the catchers over 162 games. And then also, like, again, think of all the Major League Baseball games you've watched. The balls that are in the dirt are usually right in front of the catcher.
And usually the catcher's aware there's a good chance this is going to be in the dirt.
It's going to be in the dirt because it's a splitter or whatever, right? So they can prepare themselves to block that a little easier. Whereas, again, at our level, we need catchers on their toes ready to kind of move in either direction, So
you're not going to see a hard fastball spiked, way out in the other batter's box.
Very rarely, right, in the major league. So
and if it's then, even if the catcher's in the crouch, no one's going to blame the catcher for that.
Yeah, it's a wild pitch, right? Yeah. So, I've learned that from him, and again, he's I don't know how old he is. He's 24, 25 years old, but his knowledge of the game at that age is really impressive.
Yeah, and I have quite a few friends that are Yankees fans, so they're going to love hearing all this. But, what outside of that work ethic and that quality over quantity, is there something that's maybe stood out to you about him or Sal or Matt, just from like their career as futures leaguers? Were you able to peg like those guys might actually be able to do something?
Yeah, so it's funny because like you already know that they're good because the scouts are there to watch them, right? So like I'll use Sal Frelick as an example. Like I had never seen him play before. He had actually been named the Futures League top pro prospect in 2019.
Yeah.
And he was going to go play down the Cape in 2020, but because of COVID, everything shut down except for our league. We actually played.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to watch him play in our league, in that 2020 season. And, all the scouts are there to watch him. And so everything's just a little different. Like, everything's a little quicker, right? The fast twitch muscles are there, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he's a really small guy in stature, but, he can hit the ball a country mile. He's super fast. But I think to answer your question, what I've seen of Sal and guys like Ben and Matt Shaw is how they prepare themselves every single day to play baseball.
Yeah.
And it's again, as you didn't mention before, but like I'm a high school coach too, and believe me, I'm not comparing pro players to high school players,
Yeah.
but it's frustrating to me when a kid goes to warm up for a game and he throws 6 pitches in the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Or, let's say we've got 20 minutes or a half hour until the game starts in high school and the kid's just sitting there on the bench.
Yeah.
Whereas these guys are getting their bodies ready to go.
Mhm.
They're running sprints in the outfield. They're doing all their band work. They're in a full-blown sweat
Yeah.
before the game even starts. So I think it's for them, it's their professionalism before they became professionals
Yeah.
that got them to where they are today.
And that's a really good message for, not just any baseball players, but anybody. You always want to be professional,
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing.
Well, they say, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. So
Exactly.
it's kind of the same approach.
Yeah. And now you mentioned you are the Futures League Commissioner, but you've seen some other leagues with some great, baseball talent when they were younger. You mentioned to me about a week ago a story about Mike Trout and Bryce Harper. You saw them play before they were Angels and Nationals, right?
Yeah, I think it was, so whatever year Bryce Harper was drafted, so he would have been drafted in June. That fall, I was in Arizona for work, and right across the street from my hotel was where the Scottsdale Scorpions played, which is an Arizona Fall League team. So I walked over there, bought a ticket for like $6.
Yeah.
Walked in, there was nobody there. It was like a Monday or a Tuesday or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and sat like right in the front row where the on-deck circle is. And I got the program, and Mike Trout's the center fielder. Bryce Harper was the left fielder. I mentioned before, I think I forget his first name, but Norris was catching.
Yeah.
I think he had a long big league career. But just having an opportunity to watch those guys before they became anybody.
Yeah.
Like when I say there was nobody in the ballpark, we're talking about a 4,000 or 5,000 seat stadium. There might have been 50 people there.
Yeah.
And so I could hear Trout and Harper, I could hear them communicating, like, hey, I'm taking 2 steps left, or
Yeah.
like I could hear all that going on. It was just like watching a Babe Ruth game or a kids game,
Yeah.
local game. So to see those guys, like great athletes or future great athletes,
Yeah.
at that stage was super impressive.
And it must be cool too. And you mentioned there's the stuff you saw with Sal, right? Where it's a little faster, he's a little stronger.
Yep.
Are you seeing that also with him? Those guys compared to the rest of the field out there, or?
The Arizona Fall League
Yes.
guys. So those guys were big dudes. I remember the pitcher. I forget who he was, but he must have been throwing in the high 90s.
Yep.
I mean, there was something different about those players. And again, the Arizona Fall League is where all the teams send their top prospects. So I wish I still had that program. I'd love to be able to look back on it and see, because I'm sure there was way more guys that ended up making it to the big leagues. I just don't remember who they were.
Yeah. 2 of them just happened to be probable future Hall of Famers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And some other guys you looked up to that kind of played the game, at least recently. Buster Posey was someone you mentioned who you have a rather large admiration for because of his catching.
Yeah. Growing up, I was a catcher, so I always liked, to follow who the top catchers were in the league, and he was certainly that for a while. I think he actually really changed a big part of the game to what we see now with the collisions at home. I forget what year it was, but he broke his leg on a collision at home plate, And after that, they completely changed that rule
Mm-hmm.
to now it's essentially a slide or avoid
Yeah.
at home plate, which if you watch all of those plays in Major League Baseball and college baseball, high school, every time you ever see that play, there's always an argument,
Yeah.
right? It's whether he was safe or out, the other team's going to argue it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, not that I ever want to see anybody hurt,
Yeah.
but I wish they went about that a little differently because, they played baseball for, 100 and something years.
Yeah.
With the rule being what it was. I mean, being able to take out the catcher. I wish it was, like, if you remember, I don't know how many years ago now, 10, 15 years ago, when all anybody talked about were the concussions in football.
Yeah.
And I think football has done a really good job of going back to the Pop Warner level, and they're teaching the kids the proper way to tackle.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's all you needed to do with this was teach the proper way to, I don't want to say take out the catcher, but
Yeah.
to make contact with the catcher. Because what you're trying to do is dislodge the baseball
Yeah.
from their glove, right? If the catcher catches it and he has it in his glove, I want to go after his hands.
Yeah.
And I think a part of the problem became over years, people are they're going up too high. They're trying to knock him out, right? Or in Posey's case, they got his legs at an awkward angle.
Yeah.
I think if you go in, Jason Varitek used to be really good at this. He used to go in and try to make contact, even if you just get your helmet on the catcher's hands,
Mm-hmm.
you get it on his wrist, like there's a chance he's going to open that glove up and
Yeah.
you'll be safe. So I just kind of wish they went back and taught the right way to do it as opposed to just getting rid of it altogether.
Well, but even if you get rid of it altogether, the other solution is just, teach the rule.
Right.
Have a solution. Like, this is the way to do it. I think we both coach youth sports, youth baseball in particular. It's really frustrating when you're trying to teach a kid something, and then you're like, hey, to an umpire, you're like, hey, just, like, they're balking. They're like, oh, you want me to call it? You care about winning that much? No, I'd like the kid to learn their balking.
Yeah.
My
Enforce the
team
rules
too.
of the game. Yeah.
And he's like, I had one time an umpire said to me, oh, you want me to start calling it on your team too? I was like, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, all right, I'm trying to have my kid learn how to play.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, though.
Yeah. Call the umpire signer and tell him this guy's being stubborn.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to enforce the rules.
Yeah, but I was 17 at the time. I wasn't going to do that. I was working for you actually, but
Oh, for the Patriots, yeah.
yeah, but I think they did a great job with that at second base. The grounding rule where you can't you have to touch the base now.
Yeah,
It
right.
used to be you could kind of like catch it with your foot kind of going over the base, and as long as you were in the area,
Right.
you were fine. But honestly, you see less collisions at second base now that rule isn't a thing.
Yep.
And the whole reason it was a thing originally was because too many people, because they were afraid if a guy has to touch the base, he's going to get hurt. They've done such a good job of teaching it.
Right.
You almost see nobody getting hurt now.
Yep.
And part of that is they implemented different sliding rules because of what Chase Utley and, your Manny Machado's did,
Yeah.
where they would go out way wide and it was a smart baseball play. Sometimes people really wound up getting hurt and ruining their careers.
Yep.
But it was a smart baseball play. It was a smart thing to do. And I think you make a good point of, nobody knows and everyone's always arguing.
Right. Yeah.
Just
that's
teach the
frustra-
solution.
That's the frustrating part from a coach's perspective, right? Like the way the rule is written is you cannot block the plate at all as the runner's coming around third unless you have the ball. So theoretically, once you've touched third base, if the catcher is standing in front of home plate, now he's still 59 feet away.
Yeah.
But if for 1 second that catcher is blocking the plate, and this has happened in Major League Baseball,
Yeah.
where they've actually called the guy safe, even if he was ended up being out by 10 feet because the catcher was standing there. So that's foolish,
Yeah.
right? Like, so again, I don't know what the answer is. I don't pretend to, but I just don't like the way the rule is written now.
Yeah. And, I just want to thank you for coming here. I want to give you a few minutes. Just, plug what you need to plug. We got any Futures League stuff coming up that we should be aware of?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we have the Futures League All-Star Games coming up July 21st and 22nd. The 21st is our Home Run Derby. That's going to be held at Fitton Field in Worcester. That's where Holy Cross plays. And then on the 22nd, the All-Star game is going to be at Polar Park, which is right down the street from Fitton Field. Yeah, I believe it's a 7 o'clock start. It's going to be on Nesson. We actually have 3 games in the Futures League on Nesson this year, but the All-Star game is going to be covered there. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to that. The home run derby is something special. Every year I always make it a point to go down on the field for it, and it's amazing how far, even with wood bats, how far these kids can hit the ball. So, but yeah, we're super excited about that coming up, and really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's been great.
Joseph Paolucci.
Thank you, buddy.